You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos Country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me, as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, how you doing out there, buddy?
Hey, doing pretty well. Had a good weekend this past weekend, although a long one. Drove down to Kansas City to see my sister, who was just accepted into the Kansas City Medical School there. So went down to Chiefs Country, which, wasn't too bad. I'm a Midwest guy, so it doesn't bother me too much. And ended up getting tickets after a little bit of a fiasco there for the Broncos-Chiefs game at Arrowhead in December. So hopefully that'll be a good game. It was actually a little bit kind of a fiasco, though, because I called them originally. My dad, being a boomer that he is, he didn't want to pay for the online ticket exchange fee, so he wanted to go to the stadium and get the tickets. So we did, and I called them, 3 weeks in advance saying, hey, are you guys open Saturday? Because we'll be coming down from Quad Cities, Iowa. And they're like, oh, yeah, what the game you thinking about? This game? Okay, yeah, we're open on Saturday until noon. I'm like, okay, we can make that. Turns out something lost in miscommunication. They're only open the Saturdays until noon on the Saturdays before home games. So we were running around the stadium trying to figure that out, and didn't happen. So that was a unfortunate time, but luckily they made up for it. They gave a couple Chiefs autographs, which, whatever in that regard. But we got one from the fullback, who I think his name is Sherman. I actually had to ask who that is. Sorry, guys.
Is it Anthony Sherman?
I think it's something Sherman. Okay. Number 42. I thought it was Sorensen at first. I know he was like a white safety, the third safety that they had a few years ago. But the real kicker was a signed Chris Jones football. It's a little bit smudged at the end of his signature. I think that's the reason they were giving it away. But if you guys know anything about me, even though I don't like the Chiefs, I am a giant Chris Jones fan ever since the draft. That was my guy in that draft, and he's turned out to be quite the stud. So that football is at my parents' house right now, and I'm debating whether to hold on to it or to maybe sell it for wedding money. But either way, that's not a bad exchange for a little bit out of the way, and got to spend some time with the family down there. And really proud of my sister as well for getting into medical school. So that's what's up with me. How about you? How have you been?
Good. I was down in is it Chiefs Country or Chiefs Nation?
Who cares? Chiefs Kingdom, okay. I think is what it is. But
there you go, Kingdom. You're right. I live in Chiefs Kingdom, I guess you would say, since I live in Kansas. But no, I went down to Kansas City. Unfortunately, we didn't get to connect because I was there Thursday. You were there during the weekend.
Yep.
But got my new car.
Hey,
so
congrats.
Very, very excited about that. It's a nice ride. And going to really test it out this week, or this upcoming week. I'm going to be going to finally Broncos country. I'll be in Colorado and Aspen for my Spartan run that I've been training for. And kudos to the guy that complimented me, saying that I look a little bit like Thor. I'll take that. Man, I'll take that every day.
I think he meant the new Thor, Carl.
The new Thor. Oh, then okay.
I'm just kidding. That's me.
Either way, I'll still take it. All right.
I'm getting beat up by Noob Hunter 69 or whatever the heck that is.
Yeah.
But that Thor still kicks ass.
Yes. So yes. I'll take it. But no, so I'll be out there, and then my wife today just gave me the go for being at Broncos training camp for a couple days. So I'm excited about that and possibly getting a couple days there. So maybe I can do some live tweeting for anybody out there that's kind of paying attention to us on Twitter. And of course, that's kind of a transition to let you know that you can find me at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we value your input on our show. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and the CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles and all things pertaining to your Denver Broncos. If you enjoy our show, make sure you head on over and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, where Building the Broncos along with Huddle Up are found under the Huddle Up podcast. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media. Well, the Broncos did a little something this week. Since it is game week, I can't believe it. We're finally back to football. Now, it is preseason. It is a Hall of Fame game. And very few starters are going to actually be on the football field. But, hey, it's still a game. still lots to talk about, but they released their first depth chart. And really, I heard somebody describe it as, it seems like they pretty much released what they had set up clear back middle of July when training camp started. Like, they just haven't even changed anything. They haven't even looked at it since then. And not much to argue with that on some of it, but it's still something at least to talk about and kind of see what the maybe some surprises, maybe some guys that are sticking out, maybe some guys that have moved up that weren't there July 18th kind of thing. But I guess let's just start there with what on the offensive side. Any really big surprises to you?
I think Fred Brown is probably a pretty big surprise. That's probably the biggest one. But looking through it, I mean, nothing, especially the first team, nothing really stands out. I mean, everybody that you expected to be a starter is listed as a starter. And even with like the second team, pretty much everybody who you'd expect to be a second team player is the second team player. I am surprised that Juwan Winfrey has not surpassed Tim Patrick yet. They have Tim Patrick second team and Juwan Winfrey third team. But other than that, I mean, no real surprises on the offensive side of the ball. And I guess one thing I did want to be surprised about, but wasn't surprised about, is Kevin Hogan listed as second team over Drew Lock and announced as the starter for the Hall of Fame game. So they're going to give Kevin Hogan some time. They're going to see what he can do, but I don't know, man. I think it's you got to let the peacock fly, right? You know, let's see what we got in Drew Lock, even Brett Ripien. But Kevin Hogan second team, they're going to give him a chance, and it's kind of a weird paradox, but I don't think how Kevin Hogan plays this preseason matters as much as how Drew Lock and even Brett Ripien play behind him. You know, it's really up to those guys whether or not Kevin Hogan stays not only the second team, but makes this roster.
Right. I mean, when you keep hearing pretty much every single day Drew Lock is out playing Kevin Hogan, and even Brett Ripien's making some plays where Kevin Hogan has made very few, I guess what is the point where you start getting frustrated and say the coaches are doing a disservice to the team by not giving Drew Lock those second team reps?
I think if we are through 3 games, it keeps messing me up because there's 5 preseason games now instead of 3. But after the third preseason game, if Drew Lock is still obviously outplaying Kevin Hogan and we're seeing flashes and he's becoming more consistent in a multitude of ways, which we can get into more specifics with that, then I'll be frustrated. But considering the Broncos have that extra week of practice this year and extra week of training camp, that is, and an extra game, I have no issue with Fangio slow playing it with Drew Lock, not only to, you know, really push Drew Lock to that mindset where he's got to earn it and scrap for it, but also kind of hold the fan base and the media at bay somewhat. However, I think if the rubber meets the road in the games where more people are seeing it and, you know, you see these tantalizing plays with Drew Lock, it's going to be harder and harder to get away with that, if that makes sense.
Right. I guess my main concern, like right now I'm not too worried about it because like you said, you got the extra week of practice. I would rather push the young kid and make him really, really have to earn it instead of just, hey, here's your spot, go with it. But I guess it's the reps. That's the part that always gets me, where from what I understand, there's been a lot of drills where Joe Flacco gets obviously the majority of the snaps. Kevin Hogan comes in, and then they say, all right, Drew Lock, get in there, throws one pass, and they're like, oh, drill's over. At that point, if you're continuing that on, the longer you are, the more you're doing a disservice to your entire team. If you're trying to train Drew Lock for the future, because this is the time that he can get the most snaps. Because once the season hits, Joe Flacco probably doing, 75% of the work in practice? Drew Lock maybe 25%?
Yeah, about that.
And so the snaps really decrease big time. And then the other thing is you're putting him with a lot of players that probably are not going to make this team.
Yeah.
So
and the offensive, putting him behind an offensive line that, let's be honest, the starting offensive line could be solid, but the depth, which is the case with most teams in the NFL, Broncos are no exception, but the depth is a horror show. At least that's what it sounds like. And that's what it looks like on paper too. I guess we'll find out quickly in the Falcons game. But looking at the second team offensive line, I mean, outside of Elijah Wilkinson and Sam Jones, the rest of these guys are, I mean, unless you're a hardcore fan, I probably generating a lot of who's, Jake Brendel at center. Oh, okay. Don Barclay had some play, but there's a reason that he was super cheap and the Packers were desperate to move on from him. And Jake Rodgers at right tackle. None of those guys are guys that you if you were building a team, you'd want those guys on your team. No offense to them if their families listen and whatnot, but those are I don't know, they're no names in this league. And then you got Chaz Green, John Leglue, Austin Schlottman, Ryan Cozier, and Quinn Bailey on that third team. So I mean, I do feel okay about Wilkinson and the starting guys that they can be healthy, but after those 6, it's a lot of question marks. And the only reason I'm okay with Sam Jones is because Benjamin Albright spoke up about him a little bit at the end of last season, and he was a drafted player, so I am a little bit more familiar with him. But these other ones, man, it's not great. So you have Drew Lock, even though he's going up against the second and third string defense, that second and third string offensive line is, again, it's not good, and that's not just the Broncos, it's across the league. And like that is something that concerns me a little bit. Like this, how is he going to work on his timing and getting better under pressure and sticking in the pocket when he should stick in the pocket if guys are breaking through immediately because the offensive line is trash around him? Luckily there's 7-on-7s and whatnot that can kind of work with that, but it's still early too. Like, can't emphasize that enough, but still, that's one thing is just kind of,
Right. And so, like I said, if this continues much beyond this first preseason game, this Hall of Fame game, I guess the more time goes on beyond the Hall of Fame game, especially if he outplays Hogan in the Hall of Fame game, then I'm going to start questioning the coaches and what they're doing and if they're hurting this team. Because then at that point I'm going, well, are you just sitting there saying you really don't feel comfortable with the rookie coming in and you're going to trust Kevin Hogan, who has shown 0, which to me is kind of going, that seems very backwards. One, if the backup quarterback's in, good chance your season's over.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very few teams that you would sit there and say, backup quarterback comes in, oh, we're fine. I mean, I know the Eagles won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback not too long ago, but it's still it's very rare that happens, and usually it's because they have great defenses. I mean, you think about 2015 with the Broncos, and Peyton Manning goes down, Brock Osweiler comes in. Well, the defense is still winning games. It's not Brock Osweiler, and it was same with the Eagles where their defense really stepped up. But beyond that, I mean, again, to me, if Drew Lock, if you really view him as your future, you need to be giving him as many opportunities as possible to learn on the field, work with the coaches. I did hear something today that I thought was really neat. They said that Kevin Hogan was in taking some snaps, and they had Joe Flacco teaching Drew Lock on the sideline with some of the footwork stuff. And so I thought that's pretty neat to hear that's going on, that they went over with Scangarello, and the 3 of them were working on that together.
That's good news. And one thing I was going to say is, with hearing some of the questions about Flacco maybe kind of being a little bit upset about the whole Lamar Jackson incident and, kind of tuning out there and being irritated, which, I mean, I don't mind that too much because I want my quarterback to be irritated because I want them to think they're the guy, the starting quarterback that is. But I did wonder, and this is totally conspiracy theory of me, but how much of Kevin Hogan getting those second team reps and everything like that is to make sure that Joe Flacco doesn't feel that heat and is more comfortable in his situation on a new team, new city, new organization.
I mean, I guess if you
probably not, but that's just a little bit conspiracy theory. It's just like, Joe Flacco's the guy. Like anytime they bring up Drew Lock at a press conference, it's like, well, Joe Flacco is blah, blah, blah. They want to make sure that he feels like he's the guy.
Right. And I mean, I do like a little bit of how they're talking about Drew Lock, just making sure the kid understands you've not arrived. Like, you're still a long ways away from being that guy.
Yeah.
And I like that they're pushing him that way, because to me, if you can't mentally handle a coach criticizing you, you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love that they talk about where at least once a year in training camp, Belichick will yell at Tom Brady in front of the entire team. And it's just one of those showing the rest of the team, like, he's not above being criticized. So neither will you. and just that they're not playing any kind of favorites or anything like that. And obviously Tom Brady can handle it. I mean, that's about the most no-dust situation ever. But again, I think that's good for the kid, just to really kind of, hey, I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep going. He's been showing up. I think people make too big of a deal of this, of him being the first one out at practice every day.
It's just everybody's looking for a reason for him not to be Paxton Lynch. So that's why I think it's really being pounded on. Right.
But I mean, he's doing the right things. He's doing the little things. That's not going to determine yes or no if he's going to be an all-star or not. But it's better than the other side of it.
Yeah,
I guess you could say. And so, yeah, I'm interested to see when they're willing to make that switch, and if they're willing to even give Ripien a chance to get Kevin Hogan completely off the roster.
Yeah,
I don't know. It'll just be interesting to see how many snaps they give even Ripien moving forward.
I mean, he could totally pull a Kyle Sloter and be really good in the preseason game, especially because there's going to be 5. And that's enough to kind of warrant interest, not only from the Broncos, but other teams. So that's really where he has to take a stand because they're not giving him much reps in practice. Right.
Now, I guess for me, the only position that really, I guess, shocked me too much was the tight end position for the offense. I thought, I mean, Noah Fant being second string, I mean, I know he's been playing a lot better here the last 5 practices or so, but I've been hearing a lot of good things about Troy Fumagalli as well. So I thought maybe they'd give the second-year guy a little bit more of an edge right off the bat. And then Jake Butt being ahead of Austin Fort, I mean, I guess it's expected, but the guy hasn't practiced in, a week and a half now?
Yeah, I think it's Taps is playing in the background for Jake Butt in Denver and maybe his career. So, which is sad, but he's a perfect example of risk and reward when you take a talented player with injury. That sometimes you're going to get bit, but you only used a 5th round pick. And I know George Kittle was picked 1 after, but every single other team passed on Kittle at least 4 times. So I can't be too upset about that. But sometimes you're going to hit one out of the park with that kind of guy, like maybe Juwan Winfrey. Well, sounds like he could. I mean, he's really impressing, and I didn't have hardly any expectations for him coming into the year. And sometimes you're going to lose, like Jake Butt. So I don't know. I think that Butt at 4. I mean, I think Austin Fort might even be a guy that gets above him eventually. But I don't have any issue with the first 3, and I think those first 3 are pretty much, unless there's an injury, I think those first 3 are pretty much guaranteed to make this roster. Just how things are playing out.
Right, and the whole George Kittle thing. I mean, in college,
he was injured too. That's another. He was injured a lot too.
And they were a much more running team when he was there with Iowa.
Yeah.
And so he's more of that blocking tight end. He didn't get to really show off his receiving ability much while he was there. He made some nice plays receiving wise. It just, he had so little tape on what he could do as a receiver. It's hard to project that into the NFL of him becoming possibly, I mean, right now I'd rank him as the second best tight end in football.
Top 3. I mean, I could hear the best. I could hear the 3rd. It's right up there with Zach Ertz and Travis Kelce.
Right.
So, yeah, so maybe you can make an argument for O.J. Howard, but that's just because I'm a big fan and I think he's going to explode this season.
There you go.
And T.J. Hawkinson. See, we're just going to round it out. All my homer picks. But I don't know. This offense looks okay, but I do like that Philip Lindsay is listed as the first team, not Royce Freeman. And we'll see about that 3rd team. I mean, it does sound like there's a real possibility that the Broncos will bring in Reddick, who is, I mean, he's not explosive. He's not going to create many plays or many yards after the catch, big chunk plays, and he's not going to really run the ball much. But if you can have an outlet receiver as a running back, I mean, there's probably no bigger mismatch in football. Broncos know all too well as a running back or a tight end isolated against a linebacker in coverage. And if you can get a guy who's as much of a sure thing as Reddick as a pass catcher from the running back position, I don't see that being an issue, especially when you have guys who have shown to be more carriers rather than receivers in Lindsey and Royce Freeman. However, I don't think Devontae Booker is bad by any means, but again, he's kind of one of those replaceable guys that, if they push him, let's say he does great and they end up cutting Reddick, great, they pushed him, they kind of got something more out of him, but I don't have any issue with that, especially with, Lindsey coming off an injury this last season and Freeman being injured last season as well.
Right. I mean, like you said, it's just a matter of getting as much competition as you can. And if a guy can't handle competition, then he shouldn't be in the NFL anyway.
Yep.
So that's good for the Broncos. I kind of hope they get that one done. I hope it's a non-guaranteed contract.
Yeah, close to vetting.
Right. Let them compete it out. So, but otherwise, I think this was pretty well expected here for the at least the offense on that side of things, and it will be interesting to see how things sort itself out on Thursday. Yeah,
no, I definitely agree with that, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the wide receivers, I guess. We talk quarterback, running back, everything but wide receiver. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about this. Specifically, Fred Brown being listed third team. He's a guy who's bounced around the league a little bit. I believe he was undrafted free agent or drafted by the Colts, and I think this is his third year right now. And it never sounded like he was outcompeting the likes of Kelvin McKnight or Brendan Langley or Trinity Benson, but there he is, listed above those guys. And I know that Fred Brown had a couple good completions in the stadium practice. It's not a scrimmage. I mean, everybody was saying it's not a scrimmage, but he had some good games or some good plays in that. And I'm curious if that was enough to propel him.
Well, I mean,
it's early too.
It is. It really is. I mean, that's the thing is all these receivers are going to get a chance to finally show in a game what they can do. And I mean, he's got as good of chance as anybody. I mean, it looks like he has a really good connection with Drew Lock. Those two seem to be connecting quite a bit. So I wouldn't be shocked, but it's, to me, that 6th wide receiver spot, special teams is going to be such a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that's
not even just returns.
Right. And I don't think that's as much about his game as some of the other guys. So I'm a little bit more looking at like Trinity Benson because he's a return guy. Plus he showed, have you watched any of his college tape?
Who?
Trinity Benson. I
saw some, but what was Southeastern Oklahoma or something?
Right.
It's more Kelvin McKnight.
It's a little bit hard to find, but I mean, I loved they would send him sometimes as a punt returner. Other times they'd put him on the edge to see if he could go make a block because he's just got such initial quickness to get around the corner and go make a play. And I think I saw him block about 3 or 4 punts while he was there in college. It was just awesome to watch. But again, it's just a matter of which one of these guys. Brendan Langley is another one. He's made some nice deep plays. I haven't heard his name in a while though. So kind of interesting to see what he can do. And then Kelvin McKnight is another that I really think he's got the inside track. If I'm really picking one right now, I know Nick Williams is another that he's been brought in, knows the system, guy that's been around all of this for quite a while, stepped in day one, was already making plays. So I don't know. Again, it's just preseason's really going to sort this position out more than anything else. And I mean, we know that probably for sure top 4. I'm still a little leery of whether Tim Patrick makes this team.
I think he will just because he's a very solid gunner. And that's where he's mostly going to make an impact. So that special teams prowess. If you're making not only wide receiver 6, but wide receiver 4 and 5, you better bring something on special teams.
Right. So, and I get that.
Is he dynamic?
His name.
Man.
No, he's not. And I mean, he had some great catches last year, some very tough around the edges. And I loved watching what he could do last year, considering just some of the limitations to his game. But now I'm hearing he's had a lot of drops. He's just not always felt comfortable in this system. And so it really does open up when he was with the last coaching staff, new coaching staff coming in, they have no loyalties to him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just will be interesting to see if he can make any kind of name for himself as a receiver and as a gunner kind of thing when you got these young guys really gunning for the position and really needing some kind of dynamic player for special teams. You just can't have another year where you're just having a guy go back there and fair catch.
Yeah, nope. I'm with you. However, I think that is probably going to be the case. Unfortunately, I just don't see much dynamic ability at the either returner position. And you know what? If they're not fumbling it and muffing it and whatnot, I am okay with it. Not happy. Okay. So we'll see. I guess the last questions I want to ask you here before we get moving, the offensive line again, talking about the starters, the backups. Are you curious to see Elijah Wilkinson listed as a backup left tackle when reports are most of his snaps have been coming from the right tackle position?
It doesn't really shock me, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, they've said that he's going to be the guy that can go back and forth. And a little bit I've heard that there's some question of, say, Wilkinson would beat out Bowles. Well, Bowles hasn't worked at right tackle at all.
Yeah.
So he can't really be considered a swing tackle for you. And so in some ways, Wilkinson has more value because he can play both positions as that backup position. Say Juwan James would get injured or Garrett Bowles get in. I mean, either one. But I don't know. I mean, if he's the best tackle, he should be starting. I mean, that's an easy thing to say. You can't make decisions based off of thinking an injury is going to come. Yes, an injury is probably going to come to the offensive line, but you can't base it off of that when you're making your starting decisions, especially that left tackle protecting that blind side of the quarterback. You need somebody that you can trust at that position. And so I've been hearing good things about Garrett Bowles and some of the strides he's made, but also when the coach just flat out says Elijah Wilkinson's my guy, that's been really surprising me, impressing me. That's not usually good for the starter to hear.
No, it's not, but I think that might be something that he needs potentially. Don't be comfortable. You got to work. So We'll see it. But however, they are also at the same time encouraging him, saying that Fangio said that he's been doing good in camp, and he'd be the unanimous, not anonymous choice. They didn't want to admit it, but he'd be the unanimous choice for the Broncos at left tackle if the season started. But if he's getting a couple penalties and kind of starts to snowball, Elijah Wilkinson could take that job. But I think Wilkinson, I mean, he's the backup for every single position on the offensive line besides center. So we'll see. But especially with the injury history with Ronald Leary and Juwan James, you might have Wilkinson in there before he could even replace Bowles.
Right.
So we'll see. That's probably my biggest concern. It's not only the depth of the offensive line is concerning to me, and the reports are they've been struggling with pass blocking, but it's the fact that I only have one other guy that I trust, and they have two offensive linemen that I would not be shocked if missed. I would be shocked if either of them played a full 16 games, but I wouldn't be shocked if one of them got an injury pretty early on and really forced to reshuffle the offensive line, which is what you do not want.
Right. I expect the Broncos, just because they're going to have pretty high priority when it comes to cut players when teams go from 90 to 53. It really would not shock me if they decided to bring in a couple offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you're hearing how bad, especially the second and third units have been, those guys are not safe. Even if they make the initial 53, it really would not shock me to see them say, nope, sorry, you really don't deserve to be on an NFL roster.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. I'm with you there. All right, we're going to take a break to pay tribute to our sponsors, but we will be right back to talk the defense and the special teams. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler, going through our initial reactions to the Broncos' unofficial first depth chart. It is released because they have the game, but let's be honest, Fangio said as much. Besides the first team out here, everything is up for grabs. This could be, after practice today, there's probably some jostling that's actually happened, but they had to release one, so here we are, and now we're on to the defense. Easily the Broncos' best unit so far. Maybe it is. They don't have a dynamic special teamer. People always sleep on the special team as one of the units, but the defense looks pretty good. And again, nothing really shocking here. The starting guys are Von Miller, Derek Wolfe, Shelby Harris at nose tackle, which they had listed, and it's still a little bit of I'm curious to see how that plays out, but he's listed as nose tackle. Adam Gotsis, Bradley Chubb, Josie Jewell, Todd Davis, who will hopefully be ready by week 1, Chris Harris Jr., Bryce Callahan, Kareem Jackson, and Justin Simmons. So they list that in base package. I do wish that the NFL would evolve and maybe start listing the nickel package as the main one on the depth charts, just because teams play more nickel than base these days. But that's just me being a young curmudgeon, if you will.
Now, it does seem that when they go to the nickel, Yadam's going to be the next guy in.
Yeah, so, that's what Albright has told me. So yeah. But it's still up for grabs.
It is, but it just seems like if they decided to come to the present, the NFL, when they're asking for a depth chart, his name would be there with the starters right now. Not Will Parks, not Sue Cravens. And I don't know, some people might be shocked by that just because Will Parks obviously a starter last year and now kind of pushed back because of Kareem Jackson. And I'm a little shocked that they put Will Parks there at the free safety. But again, I guess it's just more of trying to, because he and Sue Cravens are both more of that strong safety than free safety.
Yeah. No, I agree, but I think Parks has enough back there where they can kind of rotate him. And they had him listed as free safety as well last year, if I recall correctly. And I don't think we're going to see too many single high looks. So, I mean, like last year with the Bears, Eddie Jackson and Adrian Amos, did it really matter which one was the free safety and strong safety, considering how many two safety looks, deep looks they had?
Right. Well,
Not really. It was kind of interchangeable.
Right. They did. They interchanged which one went deep, which one came up more.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the nice thing with Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons is both have the ability to come up, both have the ability to play deep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that'll be a nice dynamic to have for them. But I mean, again, I guess the question is, anything stick out with the second team then?
Well, I am surprised to see. I guess there's a lot of things that stick out here. The first team is, chalk, as they'd say. But the second team, there's many things that stood out to me. Seeing Dakota Watson and Justin Hollins listed as the second team edge rushers, even though reports are Jeff Holland and Malik Reed have been really, really good. So that's definitely one to watch. And then also DeMarcus Walker, second team, he's apparently been getting better and better. There's been some positive quotes from him. So I've been much of a DeMarcus Walker naysayer as anybody. I still got to believe it to see it, but I am allowing myself to at least consider the possibility that he can be a guy this season. Really, I'm taking a bold stance there, you guys. And it's interesting and good to see Zach Carr listed as nose tackle, because last year, if I recall correctly, he was more of the short yardage goal line kind of defensive end type. So interesting there. Draymond Jones. I have been told that Deshaun Williams, who was a standout last year for the Broncos in preseason, has been good this year as well. So he'll be one to watch and he'll get plenty of reps. And then outside of that, I guess the biggest shock, I got two more big shocks, not big shocks, but things I want to talk about. Alexander Johnson listed over Josh Watson, even though it does seem that Josh Watson has been getting more first team reps. And then Sua Cravens, a guy that he's lost 20 pounds and they're not making him be super versatile. Even though Fangio, he's been a guy who's been big on the versatility, which, I mean, good, but you got to do your primary job first. So he's not spreading guys too thin. That applies to Justin Simmons, but also Sua Cravens. And apparently he's been making plays. And then after that, seeing Trey Marshall and DeMonte Thomas, that's no surprise. It does seem like Shamarko Thomas and Jamal Carter might be on their way out there at the safety position. But other than that, no real surprises. I know a lot of people, second and third team playing preseason football. I'll tune in just because I want football, but I don't really care so much. I am super excited to see specifically what the second team defense looks like and see how these guys can stand out when you're actually playing a team that you're not as familiar with, as at this point the defense is familiar with the Broncos offense and vice versa, and a team that has a pretty stable coaching and front office situation in the Falcons. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm really excited to see the second and third team guys.
I think you and I are the type that's like everybody else is like, it's preseason. We're not seeing any of the starters. And you and I are going, yes, we get to see the backups and see how this team's going to build their depth and all those kind of things. So I'm with you. I'm excited to see a lot of these guys, especially that linebacker, off-ball linebacker spot, and even the pass rusher spot too. I mean, when Von Miller missed, I think on Saturday because of a funeral,
yes,
it wasn't Dakota Watson that came in for him. It was Jeff Holland. And from what I understand, Jeff Holland actually had a pretty good practice. And Malik Reed, he's made his plays against especially second, third string offensive line. And so just kind of seeing what the Broncos are doing to replace two players. I mean, I guess Shane Ray didn't do a whole lot, but he still made some plays. And, of course, Shaq Barrett being that good backup for him. That was a very, very solid player. And so you and I had a lot of questions about that position coming in and to see if that actually is something that's been fixed or replaced well, or if it's going to be something that we're going to have to wait for another year to kind of see these guys develop. And then Justin Hollins, I mean, it'd be just kind of interesting to see how they decide to divide up his time compared to pass rush or off-ball linebacker. But yeah. I am excited about seeing Joseph Jones there in the second string linebacker group. I've heard a lot of good things of what he's doing there and how he's looking. And I mean, we've talked about it some on here of just athletically speaking, you need a little bit more at that position. I'm doing an article right now kind of tempering some of that non-athletic linebackers have been able to make it work in this system. Doesn't mean that they're all-stars, but they can make it work. But still, Joseph Jones, he is a guy that has the athleticism. So if he can have that matchup with actual football play, then the Broncos might have themselves a real diamond in the rough there.
It does sound like the Broncos are going to substitute a linebacker. Not only I guess substitute's the right word, but not take him off the field, but put it in a different type of linebacker for obvious pass downs, sub package, nickel, dime, etc. And that seems like it's been between Joseph Jones and Justin Holland. So judging on this, I'd say that Jones is winning that battle. And that's something the Broncos will have to do because they do not possess a true 3-down linebacker right now, a 5-tool linebacker, if you will. That's something that I got in the last draft cycle that I absolutely love. You got the in-the-box run stopper, the sideline-to-sideline run stopper, the blitzer, the zone coverage, and the man coverage. That's a 5-tool linebacker. That's one reason people are so high on Devin White. And right now the Broncos they don't have I wouldn't even say they have a 4-tool linebacker on the roster. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to mix and match, and same with the defensive line too. You got Derek Wolfe and Adam Gotsis, who are not pass rushers at this point in their career. Derek Wolfe fading in that regard, and Adam Gotsis just really has never shown it, but really stalwarts against the run. And then their backups, Draymond Jones and DeMarcus Walker, 285, 280-pound guys, not run stoppers, more pass guys. So since they don't have that complete player, they're going to have to mix and match and hopefully kind of not get caught one way or the other where a team can pick on you. It's really important for the defense to not keep the offense off schedule, third and long, so that way they can be in these positive situations where they can play their personnel to their strength. But that's the biggest thing for me, I think, with how this defense is set up right now. And it's not elite. There are some question marks here. I'm really, really curious to see. I think probably the biggest battle here on the defense will be that third string cornerback, whether it be Isaac Yiadom or Devontae Bosby. But I think it's a good unit overall. They have top 5 potential, but I would stamp it as long as Chubb and Miller are healthy because they're the guys who make this tick. Obviously, this is going to be a top 10. This is going to be a top 10 unit this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. Really, the Broncos, if they're winning games this year, most likely it's going to be like that 20-14, 20-17, 17-14 kind of score. You're not going to see a lot of games in the 35-31. Or when Peyton was here, what was it, 51-48 when we played the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Something like that. So, you're not going to see those kind of games, but they can definitely do a lot with this defense and with this run game and how it's all set up. We've talked about that on here a few times. But no, I do. I like this defense. I like the starting unit. It's looking very, very strong. They look like they actually have some decent depth or at least some potential. A lot of these guys haven't really proved on the field. Will Parks has. The other guys, I guess, really haven't done a lot. But again, it's some of these guys are making a lot of plays, at least in it's always, is it that they're that good or is it that the offense is that bad? And that's why you love the preseason where you finally can see them playing against other teams and, okay, maybe these guys can be something. But I do. I think there is something here.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to take – actually, we should talk about the special teams first, right? It's chalk as far as kicker and punter go. Brandon McManus had competition for him. That guy's come and gone. Colby Wadman came in, come and gone as well. Long snapper, Casey Kreider, that's all good. But the kick returner and the punt returner, which now I see that I didn't crop in the punt returner. So we'll talk kick returner first before I pull this up. But nothing too surprising here, but also just – I guess I would say underwhelming. For kick returner, you got Devontae Booker, River Craycraft, who's probably played 2 practices so far, Brendan Langley, and Devontae Jackson. So anything here stand out, I guess, and also specifically adding Theo Riddick, that really could shake this up because I don't see Theo Riddick as a returner, but that means Devontae Booker's probably not making this team.
Right. No, nothing really stands out too much. It's just... It'll be interesting to see how that really sorts itself out because, we said it on here before. The McMahon had said something about if they have 9 punts, we're going to have 9 returners. And I think it's probably going to be the same on kick return. Each time get a little bit something different out there. And whoever can really distinguish themselves earns a roster spot.
Yep.
And right now, none of these guys really jump off the page as this guy's the leader in the clubhouse. Yeah.
Not great. And then punt returner, you got River Craycraft, again, only played 2 games. Deshaun Hamilton, who has a hamstring injury, which, gosh, take it easy there. Then Brendan Langley and Calvin McKnight. So it looks like it's going to be another year of ho-hum returning for the Broncos, which if there's any, I hate to say this, and some people really, maybe more of the crazy special team coach types out there, but if there's any unit that, the Broncos can just be okay at, as long as at least at the specific positions, special teams is it, obviously they need to be able to cover and block, the other guys, the depth guys that come in there and chase down the kicker, the punter, or open up the blocks. I think that's more important on the health of the special teams this year. But looking at it, especially the kick return and the punt return, it's going to be pretty just boring considering what you could have, looking across the way at the Chiefs when, Tyreek Hill can take something to the house.
It's true. I mean, like I said, it won't be dynamic by any means, but you need it to be at least a unit that doesn't cost you games.
Yep, absolutely. I don't know. I hate to always bring it back to college football, but last year, the Iowa-Wisconsin game, Iowa by pretty much every measure besides the final score outperformed Wisconsin. They should have beat them. Iowa had 2 fumbles on punt returns. And that's the game, folks. So as long as the Broncos can take care of the ball and not give it right back to the opposing team offense, I'm okay with it. I just would like a little bit more oomph from the kick return and punt return. And honestly, that's a theme for my offseason as well. Linebacker, I'd like more athleticism and speed. Wide receiver without Emmanuel Sanders, I'd like more athleticism and speed. Kick return and punt return, I'd like more athleticism and speed. So I think that's going to be a running theme this season, unfortunately. But you know what? It's probably a transition year. We'll see. I do think that everything's heading in the right direction. But speaking of heading in the right direction, we need to take another break here. We will be right back, though, to talk a little bit about some early concerns about the offense and defense.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
And we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast with preseason just about to kick off. The Broncos going to go up against the Falcons in Canton. Pat Bowlen, rest in peace, is going to be introduced to the Hall of Fame. Champ Bailey. It seems like, everything's about right in the world. It's great weather outside here, Carl. I'm not sure how it's going in Kansas, but it's about 82 degrees and not humid here, it's what we call false summer here in the Midwest before it gets hot again in the end of August. And then we'll get into real fall, which is going to be great. Or false fall. So really excited about that. It feels like football is in the air. But I have to stay on brand. Negative Nick. No, I'm just kidding. But I did do an article, 2 articles this week that'll be coming out here soon. It should be released about the same time this podcast comes out. But I did 3 concerns on the offense and 3 concerns on the defense heading into the season. We talked a little bit about it. I was originally going to do just 3 concerns in general. Decided to split it up into 3 on offense and 3 on defense. But I'm going to go through them and I'm going to ask you your thoughts on this, your opinion, and if it is something that is a concern for you as well. So starting off on offense, 3 concerns on offense for me that I wrote down. There's a little bit more than that, but these are the 3 big ones that I think could be the biggest make or break on the season. Number 1, pass blocking to the offensive line. Offensive line pass blocking has not been great so far. I think Mike Munchak, he's obviously a great offensive line coach, but talking with people and a lot of people smarter than me, including Brandon Thorne, who I spoke with, said that, Mike Munchak, this could take a little bit of time. It could take multiple weeks. It could take a full season before the true Mike Munchak effect is felt. And given that Joe Flacco is very much a pocket-dependent quarterback, they've had some stuff out there where, he's more athletic than people think. Well, that's kind of like people saying that about Tom Brady too. But in the scope of the NFL landscape, Joe Flacco is a statue. And he needs an offensive line and an offensive line to give him a pocket that he can dissect a defense. And so far that hasn't been the case. So pass blocking for the offensive line, it's been an issue for seasons now. The run blocking has been getting progressively better. It was really good last year, top 10, top 5 unit run blocking. But the pass blocking has to get better if this offense is going to be even average, because Joe Flacco is dependent on them even more so than Case Keenum. My second big concern, speed of the wide receiver position. Right now the Broncos have got to have one of the slowest wide receiver positions in the NFL. Emmanuel Sanders is a 4.4 guy. He was coming out of SMU. However, at 32 years old and coming off an Achilles injury, who knows, right? He's still going to be the Broncos' most dynamic wide receiver as far as speed and twitch goes. But he might not be the same, and it could take him time. After that, you got a bunch of 4.5 guys. Deshaun Hamilton at the Penn State Pro Day didn't run at the Combine because he was injured, which maybe that's something to note and keep an eye on because he has another injury here this season. But a 4.5. Cortland Sutton, 4.54. Tim Patrick and Juwan Winfrey, 4.52s. And knowing what I know about the Kyle Shanahan offense, speed is a big element to what they want at the wide receiver to create space for other guys. And arguably right now, Noah Fant is as fast or faster than any of the top options outside of Emmanuel Sanders at the receiver positions, whether it be wide receiver or tight end. So that is a big concern for me. And finally, talking about Noah Fant, he's been up and down so far. Whether it be the consistency, knowing the playbook, reading where the soft spots and the zones are. He'll make great plays, but then he'll have some drops. And I think it's Cecil Lamey who's been one who's been kind of harping on some of the Noah Fant stuff. So if this offense is going to be average or beyond this season, Noah Fant has to step up because they do not have dynamic pass weapons. So if they can get it from the tight end position, that's at least an area where they can get some explosiveness, which is so important in today's pass game because you got to get chunk plays through the air, whether that be original throwing it or yards after the catch. But right now, that's my biggest concern with the offense. Any thoughts on that?
Well, the pass blocking, I'm always thinking, can you beat your division? That's always where you got to start as a team. And I look at Chiefs now with Frank Clark, of course, your boy Chris Jones. That doesn't look like a good matchup. I mean, that's the strength of their defense. The back seven are terrible for the most part, but that front four is actually pretty darn good for the Chiefs. So it'll be interesting to see that kind of matchup because most likely those guys are especially going to be going against our rookie Dalton Reisner and, of course, Garrett Bowles there at left tackle. So, I mean, I know they move around. It's not always going to be against them, but if they're looking for the weakness of the offensive line, they might be trying to test that group out. So that's going to be a problem. Of course, then you got the Chargers. They've got quite a bit of pass rush there with Bosa and Ingram, and then they added Tillery in the draft. So they're going to have some options there. And so, I mean, it definitely has to be a concern when you're hearing that they're getting destroyed. And part of it is, again, I need to see what these guys can do against anybody but the Broncos because the strength of this Broncos is the pass rush. So I guess I would be more worried about the Broncos defense if they weren't winning on a consistent basis. If Von Miller and Bradley Chubb were not winning, that would be very concerning to me that what in the world's going on with these guys. But I mean, even the inside guys though are winning and even the backups are winning. So it does lead itself to a lot of concern with the offensive line and what they're doing out there. Speed at the wide receiver. I guess I'm not as worried as you are.
Disappoint me. No, I'm just kidding.
So part of it is, I've been hearing the Broncos have been taking like Phillip Lindsay and moving him out to the slot wide receiver spot. And so right there, you've got a guy that's 4.3, 4.4 speed on the field.
But then you're taking away that threat of the run every time you do that.
Oh, not necessarily. I mean, if they go with two running back sets where they have Freeman and Lindsey on the field at the same time, or even if they bring in, I mean, even Booker is a guy that they can take out, and we'll see how that all plays out. But
I hate it, Carl.
I hate it.
I mean, I like the versatility there, but in an era where running back value is at an all-time low, you're going to take off a wide receiver for another running back? I mean, I can get it a few times, but I just think like it's 2019. Like that, we need to be moving away from that as at least a heavily used package. If you have wide receivers who can do it better,
and I get that, but I guess just giving that kind of threat to a defense and making them have to think through some of that, and Noah Fant, I mean, he's going to make teams have to worry about the deep threat no matter what. Yeah. Because he can run up the seam and make plays. And so teams are always going to have to worry about that no matter what.
But it's still a 4-5 guy, not a 4-3.
Well, I understand that.
Different, yeah.
But even there, I mean, right now, Austin Fort, he ran a 4.5 40 as well. At
Unofficial.
His pro day. Unofficial, but it was still, I mean, that's out there.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he's been pretty darn dynamic in practice. I'm excited to get my eyes on him and see what he actually looks like on the field.
Quarterback. Also, he was converted. He was quarterback, and then Josh Allen came to town, and they converted him.
Right. But I mean, I've been hearing that there's a lot of talk that the Broncos will be in a lot of 2 tight end sets.
Yeah.
So that eliminates a little bit of that lack of athleticism at the wide receiver position. You still need it. I mean, it's not. That offense is not a finished product by any means. But for where they were a couple years ago to where they are now, I guess I'm a little bit more excited by what they have now compared to 2 years ago. and that was even with DT and Sanders on the team. You could see easily DT was not DT anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see Juwan Winfrey because he wasn't healthy this offseason when they were trying to get him testing numbers. And it sounds like he's been pretty dynamic. So I'm interested to see what he can do on the field as well. I just think there's a little bit more there than some people are seeing. And maybe that's just my optimism. Since you're negative Nancy, I don't know what you would say.
A positive Polly.
Positive Polly. There we go. I'm a little bit more there. The Noah Fant, again, it was this extra week of practice.
Yeah.
They've had this extra time. So if he's still, when we're doing talk of third or fourth preseason game, I guess, whatever you want to call it, and he's still having a lot of the struggles and really not knowing where he's supposed to be, not going 100% on some things, then I'll be a little bit more worried. I mean, I knew there was going to be some struggles for him just because
his tape at Iowa. I mean,
right.
It's some of the same stuff.
Right. There's just an expectation of some of this that he's struggling with. But you look at what he can do more than what he can't do. Yeah. I always love that with Belichick. That's what he always tells his scouts. Stop telling me what they can't do. Tell me what they can, and then I'll find a way to get them used. And with Noah Fant, that's exactly what you have to do. You have to design an offense around what he can do.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I think that that one I was just looking more so for a third one in that regard. But if the Broncos offense is going to be if it's going to improve this year, I think Fant has to be a big part of it just because the type of weapon that he is. And I think at worst, you're getting a dynamic red zone guy. And that's what he turned into at Iowa. You know, he would finish off the drives where Hawkinson would be the big guy between the 20s. But in order for the offense to take that next step this year, which it has to do, Fant's going to have to be more than a red zone weapon. So we'll see. I mean, the fact that he's been kind of up and down, running before he's caught the ball, et cetera, and still listed at 2 on the depth chart. I mean, they have plans for him. They're going to use him just because his mere presence is going to force defenses to play him differently. But that's, how big of an impact can he make this year could have a direct correlation on how good this offense can be. So anything offensively that or any concerns that I didn't put here, I didn't want to steer too hard into the quarterback. Obviously, can Joe Flacco return to 2014 form is an obvious one, but I don't know. I feel like we kind of know what Joe Flacco is, and I don't expect, Peyton Manning or even Jake Plummer numbers, but I think he can be solid, and it's more so the stuff around him that's going to make the bigger impact for me.
Right. He showed his whole career that he's not going to go out there and win you a ton, but he's also not going to lose you a ton either.
Competent.
Right. It really is all about what's around him, of what kind of team you're going to have. Because that 2014 team, he had a very good offensive line. He had a very good run game, had a couple weapons that he could throw to, and they were a very, very competent team on offense. And then, of course, the defense to back that up. I mean, they just had a very good roster. And that makes them a 10-6 kind of team. Playoffs give some teams some threats, and possibly, if things really break their way, could make a run at the Super Bowl. I don't think the Broncos quite have that. Obviously, they're still in the rebuild mode. There's still pieces missing. Like I said, I mean, you talked about there's not that dynamic wide receiver. Offensive line, still some questions there that they need to grow. Defensively, still some pieces missing. So, I mean, it's not quite that 2014 Ravens team, but it's still a very competent roster that will give Joe Flacco enough to look competent on the field.
Yeah, nope. I don't disagree with you. And then my 3 concerns, the defense, I'll run through these ones a little bit quicker. I don't think they're as much. The big one, though, for me is the linebacker talent / athleticism. Kind of talked about it earlier. The 5-tool guys, they don't exist on this team right now. Even the 4-tool guys, I don't know. But the having to shuffle guys based on your packages isn't ideal because when they have the slower guys on there, they're going to pass. When they have the faster, lighter guys on there, they're going to run. I mean, classic Patriots move there, attacking them based on their defensive package when you don't have guys who can do it all, so to speak, even though those guys that do it all are rare. So the linebacker athleticism and talent is still a concern with me. I mean, they had a chance at Devin Bush. They probably had hoped to have a chance on Devin White, but it's not great. A cornerback 3 is a concern for me. We talked about it too. Yadam versus Baz Bosby. I think Yadam is probably the safer bet right now, but Bosby might have a higher ceiling, slightly a better athlete, and maybe ball skills as well, where Yadam is a guy who's consistently had struggles with ball skills, just not making plays on the ball, but more physical. So that's one that I'm curious about. And if cornerback 3 is a weakness on the defense, that's something that I expect defenses or opposing offenses with competent quarterbacks and receivers to target consistently. And then for me, another one, kind of going back to the linebackers as well, same complaint with linebackers, but 3 down defensive linemen. Right now you got Wolf and Gotsis, who are more of the run stuffer types, and then you got the guys like Walker and Jones, who are more of the pass rushers. Both those guys, they have their strengths and weaknesses, but the fact that you're going to have to rotate them in and out based on the packages means that, let's say it's a 2nd and 2, what are you doing? Because that's when you're going to be in trouble. Do you put the run guys on there? Well, then they're going to do a play action and hit you over the top. You put your pass rushers on there, they'll run at you easily. So that's a concern with me. And then to expand upon that a little bit too, I'm not worried about Shelby Harris, but I guess I'm a little bit worried about Shelby Harris just because of the usage. Last year he didn't play many snaps, more of that one technique in the sub packages where he was really good. Now he's going to play nose tackle, which is a different kind of beast. How's that going to affect the linebackers at the second level? Are they going to have room? Because I don't see Harris as much that plug that a typical nose tackle is that's going to eat up guys and create space for those other guys behind them to shoot up and fill gaps in the run game and in the pass game if they're blitzing or anything like that. And can Shelby Harris hold up with his new responsibility, taking more hits against more double teams and with a heavier snap load? So the complete defensive line, I think at worst they're going to be average. But if this defense is going to help carry the load because the offense is probably still going to be average at best, they're going to need to be better than solid. They're going to need to be a good unit.
Yeah, all good thoughts there on the defense. Like you said, it's a little bit of nitpicking just because there is talent there, but it's not all of it dynamic talent. I mean, of course, you got the 2 pass rushers, you got some dynamic players in the secondary, but like I said, there are still some pieces missing there. I'm with you on the fear with Harris because I saw it with Shaq Barrett. Shaq Barrett as a backup, very dynamic player. When you could put him in very advantageous situations or just get some snaps out of him, that was great. When you asked him to be on the field 80 to 85% of the snaps, he wasn't the same player. As the season wore on, when he was asked to be that starter for the Broncos, he just was not the same player as he was in the beginning of the season. And so is it going to be the same thing with Shelby Harris? The more snaps that go on, the more he's asked to battle there in the trenches, to take on those double teams, not just to be the pass rushing option. How does he hold up? I am worried about that too. I'm not as worried about the linebacker talent and athleticism. The more I've researched the defense and how Vic Fangio runs his defense, he does such a good job of setting up players for success. He doesn't put them in very bad situations very often. Now, sometimes you're just going to run into it where a team calls the right play at the right time, and maybe they decide to do a blitz and they are asking their linebackers to be in man coverage. But there's a lot of times where, especially when he realized, okay, I don't have as much athleticism in my linebackers, I'm going to ask them to play a lot more zone than I am man coverage. Same with the cornerbacks. When you're talking about that third cornerback, he does a very, very good job of helping protect them some. Now, it means that they're going to give up yards. It means they're going to give up the underneath stuff. But this is also why I think that they could be very successful, especially against a team like the Chiefs, where Mahomes can't help himself. He just has to take a chance. He has to do something crazy. If you make him have to go 80 yards and only take the underneath dump off, I think Mahomes can actually be had. One of the things he did was he had a lot of bad throws last year. A lot of them dropped. He had, I think, the most interceptable passes dropped last year than any other quarterback. But again, so you're asking these guys to try to keep things in front of them, make somebody have to make a mistake. And that's where I think Bosby really could make a name for himself because, like you said, he does have the better hands of the 2 cornerbacks there fighting for that cornerback 3.
Yep. Absolutely. And the other concerns stand out about the defense? Probably not. I was definitely having to stretch a little bit more
right.
After the linebacker one. My main 3 that I was originally going to do was offensive line, pass blocking, for a more pocket-dependent quarterback, speed at the linebacker position, or speed at the wide receiver position in an offense, if it is like Shanahan, really does require a speed wide receiver to create space for others, especially with Sanders' injury and age. And then finally, the overall athleticism and ability of the linebacker position. Those are my big three. I filled out the rest. Anything else that stands out to you?
Nope, I think that's it. I am interested, I guess, one last thing would be the coaching.
Yeah, and special teams.
Yep.
I mean, are they going to be able to flip the field, both punting and kick and punt return?
Right.
But again, that's its own article that might not be as exciting. That I need to see games before I can really comment on that.
Right. I'm with you there.
So, all right. Well, that's going to wrap up our first recorded episode today, Carl. We got another one for you. That'll probably come out. This one might actually come out second. I think Chad will want the Scouts Eye preview up first, but that's going to wrap up this episode today, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find more content covering the Denver Broncos. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. Both the Huddle Up podcast and the Building the Broncos podcast are under the Huddle Up podcast header in iTunes and wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. Carl, football is officially back. Feels good to be here. I hope you guys. Oh man, God, I'm so excited. I need to crack up like a pumpkin beer and start grilling or something. It feels like fall, man. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.